These villages are the mission field, not the country, but the villages. Welcome back. Today we're going to be on episode 21, and let's read through the title, not as a suggestion, and I can't make a command, but that's really how I mean it. Missionaries leave the city and go to the remote villages. I'm constantly being called by missionaries and sometimes even by mission boards wanting to counsel or ask an idea or an opinion on something. Sometimes a pastor will say to me, what's the top 3 things you tell a missionary? And always this is included in that, what I just wrote to you. Get out of the city and go out to the remote villages. I make much to do about a missionary being a church planter and not just a pastor in a foreign land. I do that because it's biblical and somebody has to. A missionary should work himself out of a job, not deeper into one. And the longer a missionary stays in a local church as their pastor, the deeper he's getting involved in that church, making it harder for him to leave. But let's stop and think, did God call you to move to a foreign country and be a pastor? Or did he call you to move there to be a missionary, a church planter? I also believe that a mission field is not a place you happen to feel called to go to or take a youth group to, nor is it necessarily a place that has dire needs, because frankly, every place does. I mean, look at this family living in a little mud hut with a tarp over it. They don't even have the grass to make a roof out of it. She has to put sticks and pieces of tile and things like that to keep the wind from blowing the tarp away. Otherwise, she and her family will get wet when it rains. That's a pretty dire circumstance. But the world is filled with things like that. Every place has a need. So biblically, a mission field is a people, and perhaps at times, a region inhabited by people of whom most or none have never been exposed to the gospel. We talked about that in a previous episode. But what Americans typically call missions is incorrect. We should be using the biblical definition for it instead of our own cultural definition. Now, personally, I've spent a good number of years in Honduras. I love the country. I host visionary trips there every summer, and you're welcome to come along. But Honduras as a country is not a mission field. Yes, there are thousands of churches there. However, there are also tens of thousands of villages where no preacher has ever entered to preach the gospel. This is just an example of some. It's not a big country. It's about the size of South Carolina. This is a scene from a village called Zursular. We call it the coffee village because everybody up there grows coffee. We have a church there, but until recently, you're looking at the church. You say, what is it, the yellow house? No. Is it that wooden shack? No. It's this tree right here. That was our church. We meet under a tree, and if it's raining, then we try to crowd into somebody's house. But before every service, we stop and have a nice cup of freshly ground, roasted, hot coffee grown at 5,000 feet elevation. Now you want to go to Honduras with me, don't you? Well, there are thousands of churches in Honduras, but as I say, there are thousands of villages like these that have not yet had the gospel. These villages are the mission field, not the country, but the villages. Now, you probably wonder, how is that possible? Well, it's simple but tragic, and it demonstrates the impact of our unbiblical and insufficient teaching about what missions really is and what missionaries really do. Now, most professors and ministers today don't have a clue. And so it's no wonder that our missionaries are failing at an enormous rate. Our Bible colleges should do better. Most missionaries perform the function of a pastor, not a missionary. They tend to congregate in the capital and commercial centers where life is easier. But you also have private schools there, banks, restaurants, malls, and the internet. But in many countries, you also have more than 90% of all the other missionaries in the country living within just a few miles of where you live. In Honduras, about a 30-minute drive from the capital, we have what we call a tourist town where families go for fresh air, to eat traditional foods, to buy souvenirs and handcrafts. We also take our visiting groups there to do some shopping and enjoy the local coffee. Any missionary living near the capital has taken his family there to enjoy the experience. But there are visible dirt roads in that village that lead up to the mountains above it, where there used to be 2 unreached villages. Used to be until we ventured there about 15 years ago, because no missionary had ever driven his truck there to evangelize them, though they were only a 20-minute ride up the mountain. Now, both of those villages have their own churches and pastors. One simple lesson all missionaries should learn is that a paved road leads to dirt roads. Dirt roads lead to footpaths. Footpaths lead to houses where people live who have probably never heard the gospel. For an example, back in about 1987, I took this picture in northern Thailand. I can tell by looking at it, by the way the houses are constructed, that this is an Aka village. But once we took the road as far as we could and then took a dirt road as far as we could, then we had to walk a distance to get to this village. This is in, I believe, Uganda that Brother Josh Martin took a picture of when he was there visiting just a few years ago for our ministry's sake. And if you'll notice, there's no road leading up there. There's a few little paths here that may have been cut by some motorcycles, but the wheelbase is far too narrow to be a truck or a car or anything else. These people had never seen a white man. All these little children were excited because Josh had entered their village, and what is that we're looking at? The same thing was true for me in this village, and which I write about in my first book, The Great Omission. I went there, they were going to kill me and eat me because they'd never seen a white man. They thought I was an albino monkey, and they were fearing for their lives of their wives and kids, and besides, I was big enough to make a good meal for the entire village. Here is a village in Honduras on top of a mountain where we evangelized among the Tulapan tribe, and some of you helped finance that a few years ago. But I want you to notice something about these. In every case, there's no road leading to it. There's footpaths, footpaths, footpaths. If you find a paved road, you'll find a dirt road. If you go down the dirt road, you'll find a footpath. If you follow the footpath, you hit a gold mine for the gospel. Never pass a dirt road without seeing what's at the end of it. I've been to many villages that have never seen an American. They had no electricity, no paved roads, no plumbing, no industry. In such villages, there's usually none who have ever ventured more than a few miles away. They've never seen a TV, a semi-truck, a paved road, a light bulb, an escalator, or a neon sign. They've never ridden on anything other than a mule or a cart. They've never been to a beauty salon or a ball game. They've never tasted a Whopper and don't even know what one is. Places like these are sometimes less than an hour from the large cities where most of us missionaries live. Nobody knows these villages are there, though most of them are on a map. Finding them will take you out of the city and into what we call the highways and the byways. But isn't that what missions is all about? Look at for example, at this picture. These are folks in Africa on a dirt road that somebody's got to go and take the gospel to them. Here's a young Indian boy on the Ganges River. Here's a young Indian girl, not India, but American India from Honduras, living up in the mountains. Here again is a village in India where they're living under blankets and living under tents. This is a little village in Peru, or a little home in Peru, that doesn't even have a road. If you can tell in the background, there's a river there. That's how they get there. Biblical missions is not going where everyone else has already gone, but where no one yet has gone. It's building on no man's foundation, not on every man's foundation.
Missionaries assemble because they were taught to. They pastor rather than continually plant new churches because they were taught to. Do you think it may be time to re-educate the veterans and better train the next generation? Sharing a copy of this book would be a great starting point. How would you find unreached villages? Find a road and drive down it. Find a path and hike it. There will always be someone at the end waiting to hear your message, and they will know of other trails you didn't notice. Is it wrong to serve in large cities? No, but why plant a garden in a farmer's cultivated fields when you can find an open field where people are just as hungry?
We hope you've enjoyed this episode in our Understanding the Great Commission series. If you'd like a copy of the book, it's available in paperback, audiobook, and digital download. Just click the link in the description below. Thank you for watching.